All right, guys. I'd love to kick this off with a simple question. What is wealth for you? What is financial wealth for you? Is it about owning a house? Or is it about, I don't know, earning a six-figure income? Or is it about having more than the others? And if so, who are the others? All of us, we are like living in our individual bubbles, and now and then a certain reality check might be good. This is not your usual tech talk today. We are not going to talk about generative AI or cybersecurity threats, but we are going to talk about money. We are going to talk about how much private wealth there is. We are going to talk about who it has and who doesn't. And we're going to talk about who it currently has and where it might be in the future. In the end, for sure, I will give you some overview of how the industry works that builds around the topic of wealth. And I will give you some insight what we as QPLIX do within this domain. But promised, this is not just another company presentation. I have some facts and figures just to give you some really insights into this domain. However, let's get started slowly. I know the comparison is kind of ridiculous, but it makes a certain point. What do you think? How many billionaires would I need to have around the same amount of money in private wealth that the state of Qatar generates per year as a GDP? Any guesses? No? All right, waiting for my answer. Actually, the answer is 1. I have these numbers from a Forbes list of mid of 2024, so it might be already outdated because things are pretty dynamic here. However, taking Bernard Arnault and his family, the wealthiest individual of the world back then, you would have around the same amount of money as Qatar generates per year. Taking the 5 wealthiest individuals altogether would bring you to Switzerland, adding another one to Turkey, and taking together the 10 wealthiest individuals of the world would get you to Spain, a European nation with more than 46 million inhabitants. I know, the comparison is kinda ridiculous, but it makes a point. Wealth is concentrated, something that we will re-encounter during my little talk. But let's not start at the top. Let's try to, get a broad understanding about wealth. There is an estimate by Boston Consulting Group. They estimate global net worth to be around 477 trillion US dollar. I know I have lots of computer scientists in the audience, so all of you know about numbers, but I really like to visualize. It's not thousands, not hundred thousands, millions, billions, it's trillions, so 12 digits. Let's start breaking these 477 trillion US dollars down. This is what we call the wealth pyramid. What does it say? It says like whenever we take 5 individuals from across the globe, some random 5 individuals, odds are that the first 2 out of this group of 5 will have a 4-figure amount of wealth, so owning assets worth 0 to 10,000 US dollars. The next 2 out of the same group of 5 people will most likely have a 5-figure amount of wealth. And the last one, most likely a 6-figure amount of wealth. However, there's only a 1.5% chance to actually meet someone within this group of millionaires. However, these 1.5% of global population own, that's what you can see on the right-hand side of my chart, own almost half of global wealth. That's what I promised. In the beginning, wealth is concentrated. Let's not stop here. Let's have a look at the millionaires. So if we have found some millionaire, we will most likely have found some next door millionaire owning 1 to 5 million US dollars. So anyone owning a house in the Landkreis München, for instance. Above this mark, the air is getting thinner, and at the top of this pyramid, there is a group that we call ultra-high net worth individuals in the wealth management industry, people owning more than 30 million US dollars. And we are still not stopping here. We are skipping some millionaires, go straight to the billionaires. And this statistic I found from 2024 from the bank UBS. There were around 2,500 individuals across the globe owning 1 to 50 billion US dollars. And above this mark of 50 billion US dollars, there are only around about 30 individuals left. These statistics are frequently updated, so nowadays things might look different. But yeah, that's the case in the 2024 study. What's so interesting about wealth is that it's not static. Wealth is moving, wealth is flowing around. And one of the big things that are going on there is the generational shift. So money being inherited from the silent and boomer generation to millennials and Gen X. There's an estimated amount of 83 trillion US dollars to be totally inherited over the next 25 years. And alone in Germany, there's expected that 400 billions of euros will be inherited per year. That's 10% of German GDP. Quite a lot, actually. And most interestingly, this shift is already happening. 2023 was the first year where there were more new billionaires by inheritance instead of entrepreneurship, something that was differently before. Let's add another angle. Let's talk about geopolitics. On the left-hand side, you can see the global distribution of wealth. 35% go to North America, another 28% to Asia Pacific, 22% to Western Europe. Looks like a pretty equal distribution, right? However, you have to keep in mind that Asia Pacific is home to around 60% of global population, whereas North America is home to only 7-8% of global population. So again, wealth is highly concentrated. However, things are changing. Since the year 2008, Asia Pacific had among the highest growth rates. You had a 5x multiple on average wealth per individual in mainland China since 2008, a 4x multiple in India. Also in the Americas, you had a 5x multiple in Brazil. Just for comparison, in Germany, the average wealth per individual doubled within this time span. Okay, so we got some broad understanding how wealth is distributed across the globe and how it is flowing around. Let's have a short look on Germany. The first interesting point is that many people don't know about. Germany has the most millionaires within Europe. Only in absolute terms. If you look at individuals or on millionaires per inhabitant, things look differently. They would find the countries you might have expected, like Luxembourg, Switzerland. But in total numbers, Germany has the most millionaires, actually. Average wealth per individual. The average wealth per individual in Germany is 265,000 US dollars. If you look at the median, things look differently. This is a list of top 25 countries. When looking for the average, we are on place, I think should be 17, something like that. When we are looking for the median, we do not even appear within this list. So high average, low median, wealth is concentrated. And just to round things up, we are on a job fair. One of the most reliable statistics I could find was from Statistisches Bundesamt, and they found that in the year 2023, the average gross income in Germany was around 52,000 euros. All right. So we have seen how wealth is distributed globally. We had a look at Germany. Now let's have a short look on what kind of industry built up around the matter of wealth. Something that many people don't really know about, but I think it's pretty interesting to get some, first insight. As always, I'm also a computer scientist. I love to work with numbers. So we are again starting with a number, with 1.7 trillion euros. That's an estimate of the total amount of wealth which is managed by German wealth management providers. Okay? And now we are trying to break this number down. First, who owns the money which is managed? Starting with the purple box on the left bottom corner of this chart, this is the retail segment. So people like you and me owning 0 to 500,000 euros. I don't know, having a bank account with their local bank branch, having, I don't know, neo-brokerage app on their smartphone, stuff like that. Typical retail segment, which is actually pretty big in terms of number of individuals within this segment. But if you look at the euros within the segment is actually pretty small. So this segment is dominated by automated approaches and less human advice services. The next segment, affluents. Affluents are a segment which is pretty interesting to banks and independent asset managers, because as you can see, this segment is really huge. There are not so many individuals in it as in the retail segment, but there are lots of euros in it. These kind of people often need a combination of retail approaches, highly automated, your typical 60-40 portfolio, your saving plans, and so on, combined with advice by highly trained individuals, for instance, when they want to finance a house. This is something where the industry is currently aggressively working on to tackle this segment to give them a better service. Above that, you would find people owning multiple millions of euros, which are typically serviced by independent asset managers, private banks, and the higher you get, also multifamily offices. The more money you own, the more complex your asset allocations might become. So the more money you own, the more you would also buy alternative assets like real estate, private equity, collectibles, paintings. And on the top of that, segment that we have already seen, ultra high net worth individuals owning more than 30 million euros. And if we follow the ladder, starting from around 3 to 500 millions of euros, depends, people would found their own company to manage their private wealth. That's what we call a single family office. An office, a company dedicated to only serve one family and managing their wealth. This is a single family office. All right. There are still people here, so I haven't lost you at this point. And this is quite important, because if this variety of client types, of wealth manager types, if this sounds interesting, you and QPLIX might be a good match, actually, because this variety is our daily business. Starting from the client segments, we are working with all of these kinds of wealth managers. We are working with single family offices who manage the wealth of single families with multiple of billions of euros. We are working with multifamily offices, private banks, institutionals, independent asset managers, down to digital wealth players who would manage single tickets around a couple of euros. So really covering the entire chain. How does QPLIX work? QPLIX is a software as a service. QPLIX is always sitting in the middle. We are pulling lots of data. We are pulling data from banks via B2B custodian interfaces. I think we are connected to around 130 banks directly, and of course 5,000 plus banks via the PSD2 standard. We are pulling transaction data, position data. We are pulling market data from various resources, so quotes, ESG data, ratings, benchmarks, and so on. We are pulling unstructured data. If our counterparty cannot come up with like an API, We would just pull PDFs, process them through our LLM using OCR, and then we would have machine-readable transactions that we can work on. Using all of this data, we would process these transaction data through our accounting engine to guarantee a high degree of data quality, which we can then work on. Work on means we can come up with PDF reports, like reporting wealth allocations, reporting performance and risk metrics. We can come up with online dashboards, smartphone applications, but we also allow our clients to make investment decisions based on this kind of data. We have implemented an ordering module, which you can use to calculate orders, which you can use to submit orders to custodian banks, which you can also use to send payment instructions. So whenever there is someone professionally managing wealth, QPLIX might play a role in their business. Also, I love numbers, also giving you some numbers here. QPLIX has been founded in the year 2012. We are active with more than 160 clients. All of these have a combined asset under management, so assets they are reporting using the QPLIX software worth more than 300 billion euros, which is quite a lot actually. To enable this, I know the slide says 130, but right now it should be 160 plus employees that we employ in our locations in mainly Munich, at Sendlinger Tor, plus Frankfurt and Zurich in Switzerland. And we are still growing. I really hope that I could, shed some light on the domain of wealth and wealth management. And if all of this finance and wealth stuff sounds interesting to you, let's have a chat right now after my talk or at our booth. It's right there. Just a few notes on what we are looking for. We are looking for really curious guys to work with us, for software engineers, or in general for software engineering. You do not have to have any prior experience in wealth management. We just expect, solid software engineering skills, knowing about design patterns, object orientation, maybe having the Gang of Four book in their bookshelf at home, stuff like that. But everything around the matter of wealth management is something we will teach you on the job. Now I'm really looking forward to some nice chats. Thank you.
You said the word Frankfurt and I was summoned. It's my city. Does anybody have any questions? I can jump down and give you the microphone, but a thing that I'm honestly also very interested in is I tend to be a person that is not maybe one of the wealthiest people in Germany. Confession time. How do I maybe invest differently than the wealthy people? Maybe I'm not as, adventurous in my investment.
That's a pretty good question, actually, because that's the same question that all of my friends asked me when I started working with QPLIX back then. What do I need to do differently? And the question is, most of the times, not what do you need to do differently, but what you can do differently, actually. Because retail investors like you and me would most likely have their liquid portfolio, so buying ETFs, funds, stocks, bonds, all of that stuff that you can trade with new brokerage apps. However, the more you climb up this ladder, the more you will have alternative assets, real estate, private equity, all of this stuff. Our single-family office clients would have boats, airplanes, old-timer cars, and so on booked in their QPLIX system. So the more money you have, the more complex your asset allocation would become, because the more money you have, the more access you also have to different asset classes. For instance, the asset class of private equity typically requires you to commit multiple millions of euros to invest into one single fund. That's something you just cannot afford as a private investor. But also there are some dynamics going on. There is something called LTIF, European Long-Term Investment Fund. Have you heard about this? Maybe? some of the neo brokerage guys are just advertising this new product. This is an attempt to democratize this asset class, to allow it to be invested in only from, I don't know, €1,000, something like that. So there is already some democratization going on. And who's interested, QPLIX has quite recently published a study together with the Institut für Vermögensaufbau, where we analyzed 10,000 of portfolios managed by asset managers for the last year, which clearly states what they focus on, what branches, regions, and so on they are focusing on. It's really available, so just need to Google QPLIX.
I see a hand and a question, and I'm coming down.
First of all, Philip, thank you very much for your explanations now. And one question. Sorry?
Closer to you, Mark.
I'm a little bit close. Do you hear me? Or should I come to you? So my question, what you can say about artificial intelligence in your business? I think it's very interesting because it's speed, and speed.
Yeah. The question was how we employ artificial intelligence in our business. And we are considering AI from like two angles. First, for our product. Second, for our internal operations. Because we think that AI is something you can use to speed up things immensely. But still you need to focus on what actually adds value to your processes, what adds value to your client's business. Particularly in our domain, trust and security is like really important. So we cannot use, I don't know, Amazon servers, Azure service. We cannot use some, I don't know, Microsoft hosted ChatGPT instance for many cases. So we do need to do many things on our own, but that looks like a pretty feasible approach. Because you can see that if we use our own LLMs, we might be a couple of months behind the global development, but it's still good enough for our business cases. And one of the, most tangible use case that we have implemented is interpreting PDFs and generating transaction data, machine-readable transaction data out of that, which was an entirely own business model before, which many people have built companies around, and now it's just, we can solve it on our own.
I don't see another hand quite yet, but I understand, especially when it comes to financial stuff, your questions might be a little bit sensitive. You don't want to ask them in front of everyone. So you obviously have the opportunity to talk to Philip right down here at the booth, anywhere. Just follow him, ask him questions, and he will answer them, or one of his colleagues. Thank you so much again. A big applause for you.
Thank you.